Hello and welcome to the video. In today's video, we're going to do a little comparison of these two AMT 1964 Chevelle Malibu SS kits. The one on the right being the all-new tooled for 2024 Craftsman Plus Series kit. And on the left, we have an original from 1964 Craftsman kit. The first half of this video will be the obvious, just comparing what's new, what's different, things like that. We will tear these two down, compare the parts a little bit closer, interchangeability, things like that. And then in the second half of this video, we'll kind of go on a little side tangent for all those that are into maybe kit bashing, customizing, part swapping, restoration, anything like that. We'll check out some of these other kits, see what's usable, what's similar, kind of some of that evolution from 64 to the current ones. So with that, let me reset and we'll get into the video. And now getting into that head-to-head, but first I do want to reiterate that the new tooling is truly all new tooling, shares nothing from the originals. So if that's all you need to know, there it is, short and sweet. It is a completely unique kit to itself, but very much in the spirit of the original. So again, that's the point of this video. Kind of check out comparison, the similarities and differences of the two. I do have the new one mostly mocked up. It's not completely built with the glass lenses and all of that, but mostly assembled so you can kind of see a nice comparison head to head, side by side. And I will take some photos here, kind of at different angles, just so to show how that they match up, built up next to each other, but then we'll tear them apart and take a closer look at the individual parts. So starting off with the new one, again, is called a Craftsman Plus, which meaning it does have the opening hood. It does come with some under hood details such as firewall, radiator support. There is no engine supplied in the kit. It comes with an engine plate or plug that is removable out of the chassis. So if you want it promo style, you can put the plug in, or if you want to supply your own engine, you could potentially add an engine into your kit here. As opposed to the original Craftsman kit or junior kit, it was more of a true unassembled promo, no opening hood, low parts count, that type of thing. But the El Camino and the wagon for 64 did have a full-featured kit with the engine and all of that detailed, so that's why I have those other kits for later in the show, and we'll see how they come into play with these two. So getting into it, like I said, we'll take some photos, compare them, and tear them down, but I do believe both of these kits represent a 64 Chevelle Malibu very well. They both look very well proportioned. Some subtle differences between the two, but for the most part, they're very dimensionally identical, all the same, appropriate body lines, badging, and all of that. So we'll take a look at some photos. I'll tear these down, and we'll get into a deeper comparison. And now we've stripped them down to just their parts. Let's take a closer look. I'll see if we can stack these together, give you just a look at kind of their body proportions, wheel wells, all of that. Going down the side, they both have the Chevelle script on the front of the fender, the V in the back of the fender. Both have door handles, door locks. Malibu SS script on the quarter panel, both very similar. Going around the back, both have the Chevrolet script on the deck lid. Change here, we have molded in backup lights on the original. We get separate ones on the new one. Both even have the little SS badge molded in. Very nice. Again, obviously the same. Opposing side. Around front, we do have a little change because one is no hood, one has an opening hood, new one has, again, hood latch and all of that. Let's You compare the hood area, both having the Chevrolet script trimmed down the middle, and they are spot on as far as the hood widths and body lines and all that. Again, measuring a lot of the parts, they are very similar. There is kind of a change on the bottom side. See if we can get this to line up. The new one is much more open on the bottom, doesn't curl under as the old one. You can see there is a bit of a difference. I think it does kind of change that side profile of how they look, but otherwise dimensionally how they are pretty close as far as like across the roof, across the bodies. See if we can match up. The actual length is almost dead on front and back. So again, very similar in dimensions, but the new one is of course a all-new modern kit. Let's move on to the underside on the chassis pans. Again, the Craftsman or promo style chassis, all molded in, very similar in their design tooling, but there is some differences. The one on my right for the new kit is like 2 millimeters wider to compensate for that kind of opened up body, a wider body at the bottom, so it fills it up better. And there's another change here. The gap between this cross member and what is like a sway bar is much narrower than the original. That is going to come into play later on. We can talk about that, so keep that in mind that there's something going on there. Again, very similar, but there are totally unique. Again, being kind of wider and all that. I'll take a look at the wheels and tires. Again, very in the spirit of the original with those TriStar hubcaps. Same patterning, the originals having the SS molded straight into the hubcap. The modern one does come with a decal that slips in there. The tires being very similar in design, just kind of that straight groove tread of old, and the old one being the original promo style that has like a splined axle that goes in there. No wheel backs, just straight into the tires. The modern one has still the metal axle for the rear, but is running a plastic pins for the front, or does come with plastic pins for the front, so it does leave that axle out of the way if you do choose to run an engine in these. Moving along, we can jump into the interior. Again, all very different, same but different. You can see that the new one comes with bucket seats and console that are separate. Back seat still molded in, and they do have a different tread pattern or cloth pattern, whatever you want to call it. The new one is much more representative of the correct pattern for the Chevelle, or the original is just kind of a generic pleated pattern. They both have like a 3-pedal design. And again, the door panels being a little more correct there for the new one, so that's a nice upgrade from kind of that generic patterning of old. There is the bottoms. The new one has the distinctive mounting locations to go into the chassis, as the old one kind of mounted into the body along with the glass. And of course, speaking of the glass, take a look there. The original having all that one piece with those alignment holes, and the modern one, again, very modern designed tooling here. We got locator pins for our glass, all of our headlights and such, but again, nice to see very thin glass for our windows, modern locators versus the all-in-one glass piece there. And both having kind of red taillight inserts, both kind of a pin style, but the original going into the body, where the new one goes into the rear chrome trim, which we can kind of look here. It's got an upper for the brakes, lower for the reverse, where the original is just a trim, but has very nice crisp molding as opposed to the new one, which has a decal insert. So again, decals are nice for detailing. And sorry for jumping around here. It's got a lot to look at. Not sure which way to go, but We've got the dashes. Both are very well done. Both have very crisp detail. Again, the original having everything graved into the molding, as opposed to the new one is set to receive decals for gauges, but both are pretty good representations of the dash. Very prominent bezels on the original with heater controls. Very nice piece there. And then we can kind of look at the chassis, as they both have engine plugs that we can kind of pop in there. So you can see that they both fit in very nicely. If you just want to detail it out, simple promo style. Again, both detailing out very representative of each other, but there's some small differences. But again, both fit in very well, clean up nicely for that part. And kind of jumping back outside the car, we'll look at the grills and bumpers. Here is the rear bumper, the lower being the original 64 with the dated plate, the top both being good representations of the correct bumper. I will say that the original has a little better detail on that license plate light, where it's just kind of a knob there on the modern one, but still a nice bumper there. Moving on to the front bumper, there's kind of a big change here. That is a separate bumper as opposed to a one piece, but we'll take a look at the bumpers first. Again, you got the dated bumper on the original. We got some bolt heads, and we have separate lights for the modern one molded in for the original, but both have a very nice shape correct to the Chevelle. And jumping up to the grill, take a look at the grills. The modern one is a nice piece. Both have kind of the correct patterning. The new one having headlight inserts as opposed to the molded in chrome style, which is nice. And here we can kind of taper off into kind of, if anybody's got questions as far as kit swapping or restoration, I don't know if there's going to be a ton of interchangeability as far as restorations, but a way that somebody could possibly use is that grill. So you can see it fits right up in there, and it's dimensionally like perfect for the original. Of course, the only thing with using a modern grill is mounting that bumper. It's not just that one piece like the originals, so you'd have to do a little bit of work to, of course, address that bumper. But again, there is one little piece for sure that you could use, and with some work you could maybe use something like the interior. It does, of course, fit up in there, and I think with some modifications it's definitely going to be for the advanced person if you wanted to, of course, swap into an original body. But I think looking at it, you could make it work again with some massaging, working around that glass and all of that. It could possibly be done. No guarantees, as I have not done that yet. And now we're going to kind of, I guess, run off the rails a little sidetracks Villa. You know how I brought out the 64 El Camino and the 65 Chevelle? Well, there's a few things we can talk about with those, as far as like customizing or the engine swapping, things like that. And the engine swapping is going to be the first thing we talked about. I've tried a few different ones. This one's out of the 65 Chevelle wagon, which is a straight descendant from the 64 kits, so that's one reason for choosing this. I pulled out like a big block, a few other engines, but again, this one's kind of meant to fit the style of chassis. Big warning is to make sure to fully mock up and test fit your engines if you're planning on putting an engine into this new kit, because of what I had mentioned earlier in that spacing. It might be more accurate as far as visually underneath, but when you go to put an engine in, you're going to run into some problems with where that opening is. Flip this over. As you can see, we're kind of run out of space there. And we're basically sitting on that fan. So again, trying to keep it factory original, you're going to have to probably cut out everything out of there. If you want to mow it out to do that, or you can go a little more modern, maybe an electric fan will let you bypass that. But again, that little bit of difference is kind of a big difference, as we can drop that engine right into the old frames. It's awfully close here, but it is away on the original, and looks, you can see a little bit more of that engine in that hole. We can even pull out that wagon chassis for the true accurate fit. Again, this chassis looks very similar to all the others. There you can see there's even a little bit more space in the wagon chassis. So that's one thing you may consider. I don't know how well it'd work out, which direction's the easiest for you. Probably to just grind that space out if you want to go that way. But you could possibly drop in the wagon chassis. Again, it is narrower because this one's much wider. I don't know if you want to tuck that in, fill in that space. Fits up pretty well back here, or up front. In the back it's different because it has a bed floor. The wagons and the El Caminos has a bed floor. Got a spare tire there and a little bit of trimming you'd have to cut off here. But of course that is a possibility to maybe make the engine swap a little bit easier for you in that regards. You can pull out the El Camino one too real quick. They all visually look pretty similar. You can see there's a little bit of differences there on that front end that can make your engine swapping a little bit different. I think the El Camino one would work as well. I think that one has the biggest space there up in the front end, and you don't have to worry about a spare tire, but again, it doesn't have full wheel wells, so it's kind of your choice which way you'd want to go. Again, these ones are a bit narrower than the original, so if I was going to do it, I'd probably try to modify this front end or swap in an entirely different chassis out of a more modern style kit. And here will be kind of the last segment here, and we're going to bring out the 64 Chevelle El Camino. And the reason for that is that's a representation of the Craftsman kit, but with the full tooling, opening hood, engine, all of that. So we can see those work, as well as this has customizing parts. Both the El Camino and the wagon do. So I would have to assume that the new grill fit into the old body, so I'd have to assume the old grill parts will fit into the new body. Of course, probably with some tweaking, but we can kind of look into it. Pull our body out. We have a couple of hoods. Actually, we would probably go, as far as restoration, a new hood onto old body, and it does fit. As you can see, it fits really well on the passenger side. Maybe a little bit of trimming needed for the driver. A little reshaping there, but otherwise fits really well. So if you lost a hood for your 64, you can pick up a new kit and find a replacement. Common thing to lose on those vintage kits is the hood. Well, you probably wouldn't do it this way, but of course your old hood would go on to the new kit. It does fit a little off. Again, we have a clip tab there. As far as the custom parts, it's not going to go straight on this kit because this hood for this kit has a big dip, as we got the full radiator support there, or the El Camino kit is kind of predetermined with a drop there on that radiator support for clearance. But of course it does dimensionally fit the opening, so if you want to trim out your radiator support, you could come up with a custom Chevelle. If you happen to have any of the El Camino parts, I'd love to find more of the customizing parts for these because I'm a big custom fan. You pop out, I think I do have a part of a custom grill there. Got one of the headlights here, and of course that does fit the opening. if you wanted to run it. You have a big knob sticking out, so it's kind of interfering. So it's going to take some advanced customizers trimming and fitting to get everything to work. If you do want to kind of go that way and do something wild with that. But if you guys happen to have any of the original 64 parts that you'd be willing to sell me, let me know. We've got a few projects for that, especially the custom stuff. I can always use custom parts, but now that I put out this video, I probably lost all chance to find custom parts because you could potentially add them to your new kit. With that, I think it kind of wraps up everything we need to talk about. If you need restoration parts, of course, for your 64 El Camino 64 wagons, I would recommend going to the 65s because that's the natural evolution from those kits, where the sedan or the hardtop got evolved into the funny car and the modified stalker, so there's nothing much to go there. It wasn't really a full kit to begin with. So I hope that answered any questions you could have had. Hopefully not too much rambling. A lot of differences to cover, as they really are different tooling kits. So with that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.